Hey guys, welcome to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. And I'm super excited to be here because we're going to be having a lot of interesting conversation about the very latest that happens, not just here in the United Kingdom, but in fact all over the world as well, right? So don't forget to be a part of the show. Don't forget to share your thoughts, share your opinions with me because I would absolutely love to hear what you have to say with regard to what we are going to be talking about as well. Okay, now I want to very quickly remind you that you can be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me on 078 share your thoughts, share your opinions because that will be absolutely amazing as well. Okay, so don't forget to do that and don't forget to let me know what your thoughts are because we're going to be talking about how 1 in 10 United Kingdom patients actually caught COVID-19 while they were in the hospital, right? And this was actually during the first wave of COVID-19. So obviously, what anyone would think is that look, hospitals are the place that we're all supposed to be safe, right? I mean, you basically go to the hospital to get treatment. So in instances like that, and especially since you obviously assume that when it comes to the hospital that that's what's going to keep you safe, and now they found out that when you're in hospital you can actually contract COVID-19. What exactly does it say for all of these people, right? Because obviously it's going to be scary. No one will want to come to the hospital as well, right? And these are all of the things that we're going to be talking about as well. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you share your thoughts and your opinions because I would love to hear what you have to say. All right. So text me on 078 share your thoughts, share your opinions, and also don't forget to go follow us on our socials, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok because that's going to be absolutely amazing as well. Okay. So don't actually forget to do that, and don't forget to be a part of this show, and don't forget to download the app either because that's available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And now let's actually dive into this topic and talk about this because there are so many things that we can talk about this when it comes to COVID, when it comes to hospitals, why exactly this situation existed and whatnot, right? Now, researchers actually found that about 1 in 10 patients were in fact infected with coronavirus while they were in the hospitals during the first wave of the pandemic. All right. And what that basically says is that, at least in my opinion, what I feel is that during the first wave of the pandemic, we weren't really prepared to face it, right? Because it was something completely new. We had no idea what we had to face and we really didn't know what kind of precautions and what kind of steps we needed to take. So this was like completely new, not just for you and me, but also for all of these people in hospitals, especially doctors, nurses, other healthcare professionals. It was so new for all of them as well. All right, and that is why they weren't actually prepared to deal with all of this, right? Because researchers also found that during that first wave, this number actually rose to about 1 in 6. So it started with about 1 in 10 people getting COVID-19, and then it actually increased to about 1 in 6 people getting COVID-19, right? And this was after the peak of COVID hospital admissions, right? And this was basically what the research had found, right? And right now, if you look around the world, if you look around the United Kingdom, we have vaccination drives that are happening, right? I think that is something that we all have to and can be grateful for because those vaccination drives happening essentially means that so many people are going to be protected, right? So many people are actually going to be safe and they're going to have much better immunity. And that is what vaccination has actually showed us and taught us as well. And you have to thank the world for vaccinations because if not, I do not know how we would have survived this because I mean honestly even I'm getting stuck. I mean I'm getting fed up of being stuck at home all the time. However, right now, because we have vaccinations, because we have all of these things happening, what that essentially means is that because of these drastic improvements in the lifestyles we have, that's actually making us much more immune and much more safe from the virus, right? And right now, we also know how exactly to deal with the virus, which means we do have an increased supply of PPE suits and we have additional masks, we have COVID booster vaccines. And with keeping all of that in mind, we're actually in a much better place than we were when the pandemic first started out, right? And even the fact that we can understand the virus better, the fact that we know how exactly it works and what precautions we need to take, has actually dramatically reduced the risk of catching COVID in hospital settings, right? So that is what is important to keep in mind. Now, it's always very, very important for you to keep in mind that when these things were happening, when we had COVID-19 first come to the United Kingdom and people were getting so sick and so many people were getting admitted to hospital, what we needed to keep in mind is the fact that at that point of time, no one really knew how to deal with the virus. No one really knew how exactly this worked and what kind of steps they needed to take. However, now things have changed for the better enormously, right? And that was actually said by Dr. Christopher Green, who happens to be a clinical lecturer and a consultant physician in the University of Birmingham, right? And he basically stated that during the first wave, on average, about 11.3% of COVID patients in the United Kingdom, in fact, contracted COVID-19 after being in the hospital for other reasons. So when they were actually in hospital, they weren't there to get medicine or medication for COVID-19, right? They basically came there to get medication for whatever other diseases that they were going through. And it was then that they really understood, or it was then that they really realized that, these patients got COVID-19 through the fact that they came to the hospital to get medication for other diseases. And now we're actually going to head into a small break. And after that, we will be back to discuss this more. So until then, make sure that you stay tuned.
We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value and may still be doing quite a good things.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super, super excited to be here on this beautiful Monday morning, all right? And the reason is because the weekend was just, 2 days ago, if I'm not, of course I'm not mistaken, because the weekend was literally, yesterday, and a lot of us got to enjoy ourselves, get that rest that we really needed. So we're finally back again on a Monday, starting the work week as normal, and that is what is happening, all right? So if you want to share your thoughts, share your opinions with me, it doesn't even have to be about what we're talking about. It can simply be about how you're doing today, what you're going to be up to, and you can just text me or call me on 078-5247-3473. Share your thoughts, share your opinions, and that will be absolutely amazing as well. Now, I want to very quickly go back to the topic because I still have a lot more left to talk about. But before we actually head into the topic, I want to very quickly remind you that you can be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me or call me on 078-5247-3473. You can actually go follow us on our socials as well, right? You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And actually make sure that you're always informed and you're always updated about the very latest that happens here on Relax Radio. And something else that you need to keep in mind, obviously, is that you can go download an app which is available for free on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store as well. It's completely free of charge, so don't be shy, go download it, right? So just want to very quickly remind those things to you. But now let's actually get back into our conversation, right? Because we need to talk about how so many patients got COVID when they were admitted to hospital and why exactly that happened, so we can dispel all of these myths and fears and rumors that exist right now with regard to COVID-19. All right. And I personally feel like I need to do that because there is so much of misinformation at this point of time. So I have to make sure that you know the very latest about what we are going to be talking about. All right. Now, something that we need to keep in mind is that first wave of COVID-19 was, in fact, the worst part of the pandemic. It was, in fact, the worst wave of the pandemic because we were so not prepared for that, right? None of us knew how exactly it was going to be. None of us knew what this new virus was. So we weren't really prepared. We didn't know what precautions we had to take. And if anything, the past, in 18, 19 months have taught us the way to deal with this pandemic. And sure, we're finding out new things about this pandemic. We're definitely, figuring out things as we go along. However, the information that we've gathered right now is in fact enough for us to proceed and try and make sure that not just ourselves but in fact our families are safe as well. Okay, now Dr. Green actually said that the worst of the pandemic was in fact the first wave as far as hospitals were concerned, right? Because if you don't remember, you remember the hospitals were in fact overflowing with so many, they were overflowing with so many patients, right? It was basically an influx and it was this huge burden on the NHS as well because they couldn't really keep up with all of these admissions that they were having inside their hospitals, right? And there was also, a substantial variation with regard to acute and general hospitals, right? Because in some busy hospitals, there were in fact outstanding examples of good infection prevention control and practice, whereas in some other hospitals, the standard was not actually that good, right? So most of it actually depends on the way you have infection prevention control within hospitals as well, right? And the truth of the matter is, if you didn't have a good, infection prevention control in the beginning to begin with, you definitely are not going to get it in the middle of a pandemic, right? So obviously your rates of infection are going to increase because your method of infection control is in fact not the greatest. It's not the best, right? So that is basically what happened, right? And the scientists who are actually doing this analysis, the ones who are doing this research, actually found out that there were, in fact, other multiple causes that resulted in that resulted in the infection spreading so fast as well, right? And number one, obviously, was the fact that there was inadequate PPE suits, right? And if anything, we know how much of, we know how stressful it was even for the government to get those PPE suits because at that point of time, the entire world needed it, right? And because the entire world needed it, it's not like they could just manufacture extra and give it to us here in the United Kingdom. They basically had to make sure that everyone in the world got it, that everyone in the world got it, right? Because the thing is, if the resources that we had at that point of time weren't given, not equally, but weren't given to all of these countries, then we would still be dealing with a much worse COVID outbreak, right? And that's just the truth of it. So there was inadequate PPE and also the test supply of, all of these tests and PCR testing, COVID testing, all of those kits, they took a long time to come about as well. And in addition to all of that, like I said, we really didn't have any knowledge on how the virus transmits, right? And we also didn't understand at that point of time that there were so many different variations of the virus, which is what we're seeing right now, right? We basically have the Delta variant, we have the Delta Plus variant, we have the Beta variant. So that is just evidence enough for you to understand that at that point of time, we weren't actually equipped to deal with the pandemic because of our lack of information, because of our lack of knowledge, and because it was something completely new, right? We're still taking time trying to adjust to how much things have changed. So obviously, even for hospitals at that point of time, it's not like they could have just figured out how it all works overnight because that would have been impossible, right? And if anything, what we have learned right now is that we've actually learned from all of those, right? We've learned that hospitals are in fact the only way you can cure your disease. Hospitals do in fact have all of those resources that you need to make sure that you're much safe and you're much safe from the virus, right? And if anything, what this research is telling us is that we have now gotten all of the information that we need to move past the virus, to actually make sure that we give you the best care. And if anything, that is what is currently happening now, right? Because now all of these patients are receiving good care, they're getting cured. And obviously, that is also because the vaccinations, the vaccines that all of the citizens in the United Kingdom have been getting have also influenced, the reduction in infection and in deaths as well. So that is absolutely amazing news, and that's why you should always trust science. You know what I mean? Because there's always ways in which you can solve the problem, ways in which you can actually make sure that it's going to get better for you, and not just for you, but for your family as well. So that is what we're going to be talking about. All right, and now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that, we will be back to keep talking more about this. So until then, make sure that you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be, so that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account, and then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different, right? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country, to be fair.